हाँ, absolutely. Recording शुरू है
Okay.
sir.
All right, sir.
Recording शुरू है. We're just waiting for Nilufar madam to join, and then we'll start. Five of us are here.
Okay, let's see who else is supposed to come.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. जी, Assalamualaikum भैया. जी, भलो अच्छे.
Our keynote speaker is here. Colonel Ashraf is there.
Yes.
Then Zainuddin Khan, myself.
Right.
I think the rest should be here any moment.
Okay.
We can start in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, shall we wait? Yeah,
That
5
is-
minutes probably.
Yeah.
Let the chief guest come.
Ji. The keynote speaker was the first to arrive.
Oh.
He's
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
From so far that I thought I don't want to make any blunder.
Yes.
With Zoom meetings and internet connections, you never know what's going to happen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Shada, you're here?
Yes, I'm here. And
Okay.
in fact, Dr. Azimuddin, I already have your book and I'm reading it. Very
Oh.
interesting.
Ah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's,
Nice of you.
it's very well written. I like the flow and the conversational style that you've written it in.
Good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good.
So in fact, I joined this webinar today only to hear you speak.
You hear a lot of people.
Yes.
Important people.
Shada is
Yes.
here, but now she's in Canada.
She's
Yeah.
joined
She's in a
from
very
Canada.
good Canada.
Yes.
And, she is a computer specialist, IT specialist.
Very nice. Very nice.
Wonderful.
So waiting to hear your talk, Dr. Azimuddin.
Thank you.
But,
We'll be happy to.
but you look quite young because when I saw your photo
He
in
is,
the
yeah.
I was expecting somebody older.
He's young.
During the time of liberation, he was just 8 years old.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
I read that. Yes, I read
Still very
that.
young.
Yes. In fact, once I was talking to Ambassador Mohammed Mohsen, and he
Yes.
said yes, he knows you quite well, and then we had a long
Okay.
chat about you. Yeah.
I see. Wonderful.
So when are you starting?
Start in 2 more minutes.
Two more minutes. We'll
Okay.
start.
Yes,
Okay.
because we're waiting for the chief guest, Miss Hasna Maudud.
Hassan Maud.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Okay. Mhm.
We'll start in 2
How are you,
minutes.
Nilufar?
Yes,
Hello,
I'm fine.
everybody.
How are you?
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
You're having a great time with grandchildren, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Ready, we have,
and have some
Yes.
time, so we kind of chit chat and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I had a long chat with Dr. Azimuddin,
Mhm.
and he came in first, then followed by myself, then I think Zainuddin Khan came in. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's good to have. I was a little worried whether or not the system is going to work all right. But by and large, we have been very lucky.
That-
The Zoom thing is very stable in all our
Absolutely,
programs.
very stable. That's
Very,
true.
Very good.
So what
Assalamualaikum,
time?
Mahfuz bhai. Assalamualaikum, Mahfuz bhai.
जी वालेकुम सलाम वालेकुम सलाम yes fine जी वालेकुम सलाम yes
Well, you're looking much younger.
thanks so much
Yes.
thanks so much who is not
You know, Mahfuz,
who is not
I just returned from Canada.
right yes
Right, alhamdulillah.
Zain bhai, Assalamualaikum.
I think we can start.
Shall we start without the chief
Yeah,
guest?
Others will come in and join. Apni shuru karen.
Yeah, two more people are joining. Sheikh. Professor Sheikh and
Yeah.
Mahbub Rahman.
There are many more. Some more. You have to join. Let us start.
Shall we start?
We follow current, please.
Okay. Well, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On behalf of Policy Research Centre, a think tank, Bangladesh, I'm honored to welcome this learned group of people on the launching of the book, Boy Refugee, written by Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, a surgeon living in USA. This is Nilufar Hai Karim, extending a very warm welcome to you all. To launch this historical book, we have with us Ms. Hassan Maudud. She's actually, her full name is Hassan Jashimuddin Maudud, a writer, an environmentalist, and a retired parliamentarian of Bangladesh. We also have eminent scholars who will speak on this occasion. Before we go in to welcome the author to give his keynote speech, I would like to request the chairperson and co-chairperson to address this August gathering. On our honorable chairman of PRC, Dr.
Thank you.
Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed will chair this book launching session. Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed is an outstanding scholar, a scholar, a management specialist with exposure in management in educational institutions of higher learning and financial institutions. Having retired as a Vice Chancellor from Darul Ehsan University, he is presently the chairman of Policy Research Centre, Bangladesh. He is also a chairman of the network of Asia Pacific Schools and Institutes on Public Administration and Governance, that is NAPSIPAC, located in Delhi, and chairman and editor-in-chief of the Finance World, chairman of Royal Resort and Holiday, director and professor of Bircham International University in Spain. Dr. Ahmed has a strong educational background. He graduated from Dhaka University, studied MBA in banking from Edward University, USA, and PhD from Bircham International University, Spain. He has organized and chaired many international, national, and regional conferences, seminars, and presented papers, authored several books and technical papers too. So with these few words, I mean, he has so many things to say about, I think it will take hours to introduce him. So with these few words, I would like to welcome Dr. Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed to chair this session and say a few words at the beginning of the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nilufar Karim. I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Khwaja Azimuddin. I was actually intrigued to read his book and the reviews that I've gone through. And the first question I had asked him was, are you by any chance from the Dhaka Nawab family, the Khwaja family? Because you have this name Khwaja. He said, no, it's not that. I'm from a certain part of India. So, you know, this the entire concept is really intriguing. As an 8-year-old boy, how he gathers all this information, then crosses over to India, and there's a place called Roorkee in northern India, and he's there as a prisoner of war along with the Pakistani army and other things for 2 years. And then, of course, they're all taken over to Pakistan. And then he studied medicine and becomes a doctor. Later on, he goes over to UK and gets further high qualification. Then finally to the USA, where he's become an eminent. I would also like to welcome here our CEO. He's an environmental expert, Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed. You'll be hearing certain things about him. Then, of course, we have the chief guest. She will be joining us in a moment. She's a very distinguished writer and has also been a visiting professor in different universities, Europe and the USA. She is also a old parliamentarian, having been elected twice to the Bangladesh Parliament. She's the daughter of a well-known poet, Azimuddin Ahmed, and the wife of Mr. Maudud, who was the Prime Minister and Vice President of Bangladesh. So we also have a number of other distinguished personalities in the panel here. You'll be listening to each one of them. So we have made the whole program in a manner that, I think there's some disturbance from somewhere. Please try to unmute. Please try to unmute. Okay. Now with this, I would like to hand over to Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed. He will say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening to you all, and Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed,
Yes.
let me introduce you a little bit in a few minutes.
Oh, sure.
Okay. I'm very
Sure.
proud to introduce to you the Chief Executive Officer of Policy Research Centre and former Secretary, Government of Bangladesh, Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed. Presently, Dr. Haq is an adjunct faculty, Department of Development Studies, University of Dhaka, and Bangladesh University of Professionals. His research interests are sustainable development, climate change, and disaster management, some burning global problems that are of regional and national issues. To his credit, Dr. Haq has a number of publications, including chapters in peer-reviewed books of reputed publishers. Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed has been a valuable resource person in representing PRC in national and international forums. I'm pleased to invite him to briefly address the meeting and act as co-chairman. Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed, would you please say some few words about Policy Research Centre? Thank you. Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed, please.
Sir, please unmute.
Sorry. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to you all from Policy Research Centre, Bangladesh. And well, it's a great privilege for me to attend this webinar, and especially to discuss, or especially to attend this launching ceremony of a book, The Boy Refugee, by no other than a surgeon with background in medicine. He has written a book on refugee. He's Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, based in USA. So it looks like that. Well, I tried to look at a couple of pages, shuffle through a couple of pages of the book, and to me, it looks like that it would be a very interesting one. At least the experience of a child, being a refugee and then went through a process. In this regard, I would like to mention that at Policy Research Centre, we did conduct a couple of other seminars as well on refugee, on the migration issues, and the personal account of a person, personal account of being a refugee. So we had one or two, and from that perspective, this discussion, especially on this launching of the book, I'm pretty sure that it would go a long way, especially.
Please unmute.
Sir.
Unmute.
Yeah, we like to. We would be enlightening ourselves on this issue of refugee. So, without much discussion on that issue, I would like to invite Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, to present his book, book before us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Azimuddin, please.
Dr. Mahfuz, please let me introduce Dr. Azimuddin.
Yeah, please.
Very short. Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin is a colon and rectal surgeon in Houston, Texas, USA. He received his Doctor of Medicine degree from Dow Medical College, Karachi, Pakistan in surgery, 1993. In 2000, Board of Certification in General Surgery, and in 2003, he received the board certification of colon and rectal surgery from American Board of Colon and Rectal Surgery Institute, Chicago. He has been working as a proctor robotic surgery in Texas A&M University College of Medicine, Houston, Texas. He has tremendous achievement in this on his life event, The Boy Refugee, depicts one of his passions as a writer. Dr. Azimuddin dedicates to help build bridges between communities, including festivals, exhibitions, and workshops. I have the honor to request Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin to narrate the story of his book in his own words. Please, Dr. Azimuddin.
Thank you very much. And Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Appreciate the generous welcome and also the opportunity to talk in front of such an august forum. I'm impressed with the knowledge base that you all bring to this place, and all eminent scholars and people from Bangladesh and elsewhere in Pakistan as well. So it is my privilege and honor to be in such a learned group of people. And thanks again for the invitation to talk in front of you. So it's always a pleasure to talk in front of a group of people, and I've done a whole lot of discussions and talk, but it is especially heartwarming and especially nice if the invitation came from a place where I was born. So Bangladesh is where I was born. That's where my heart is. And I'm so happy and delighted to be with all of you here today. Thank you. So I will tell you a little bit of a background about my family, about the book, and how it all started. As you're all aware, with the partition of India in 1947, a lot of people from India migrated to the Muslim majority places, that is east and west of India. And some people migrated from India to West Pakistan, and some people migrated to East Pakistan. And it so happened that my father decided, who actually is from Hyderabad, Deccan in India, he decided to go to East Pakistan. So just like, many people went to West Pakistan, he decided to go to East Pakistan to try out his luck. He had just graduated his BSc from Osmania University, and looking for a job, he went to East Pakistan. There, the Adamji jute mills had started in 1953 or 54, and he got a job in Adamji jute mills. He was an assistant manager in Adamji jute mills, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar. It was obviously the biggest jute mill in the world at times. So from 1957 till 1971, he worked there. And at 1971, he was an assistant manager, mill manager in mill number 3. And we lived inside the complex of Adamji jute mills. So it was, a good time for my family. I had a brother and a sister. My mother was a school teacher at Narayanganj preparatory school, which still exists today. I've looked it up in Narayanganj, and my family lived within the compounds of the Adamji jute mills. We were a non-military, non-political family, and obviously had nothing to do with what was happening around us. But we were acutely aware of what is happening around us. And to this day, I remember my mother saying again and again, we have nothing to do with it, so why should we be worried about this? You know, when there was a lot happening around us and people were advising us to leave East Pakistan, she said, no, this is where we came. And why should we go? Because this is our land and we have friends and here, and this is our place, and we really should not go to West Pakistan because East Pakistan is where we are. But unfortunately, as you know, when things happen, you know, there is, it starts with rhetorics and then it starts with action and then rioting and this and that. So unfortunately, the history is out there. You don't need to know the history. You know, there was a lot of unfortunate events that happened in the 60s. You know, lot of, in fact, I'm actually very proud that my son, who was inspired by my story, he wrote a thesis, his master's thesis on the genocide in Bangladesh. So he actually, you know, went through the 10 steps of genocide and described how the genocide or the, you know, things happened in Bangladesh, unfortunately. The West Pakistani military had a lot to do with it. And in fact, even more than that, I think what had got to do with this is one people's acceptance or non-acceptance of other people. And I think in life, whenever that happens, is that I am better or I need more than you do, bad things will happen. So unfortunately, I'm not going to say anything more about those events, but needless to say that both sides suffered. One side probably suffered more than the other. We were among the Biharis. And if you remember in those days, everybody who was from outside of Bengal was a Bihari. So even though my family originated from Hyderabad, Deccan in India, we were lumped into the group Biharis. And during the war and after the war, we were the unwanted people. And, you know, my father at that time made a decision that, you know, we need to escape from here because there was too much happening. And so at that time, my father sought refuge in the cantonment. After, you know, it's strange that I grew up in Pakistan. And in Pakistan, there is still this thing about the fall of Dhaka. You know, you celebrate it as independence of Dhaka, and of course, rightly so. But in Pakistan, people say fall of Dhaka. So there's kind of, you know, perspectives. And we all got a right to our perspective. And, you know, this is the word that I grew up with. So I apologize if I hurt somebody's feeling. But we call it the fall of Dhaka, and more rightly so, it is the independence of your country. So after the independence or the liberation of Bangladesh, my father decided that we need to escape because there was some danger to his life and our family's life. So we decided to seek refuge in the cantonment. The days of the war were very harrowing. So we lived in Adamji Nagar, and we fled from Adamji Nagar on the 4th of December with just barely the clothes on our back. And we ran over to the cantonment, and from there we took shelter in another place. And when the bombardment started more, we went back to, you know, other places. So it was quite a harrowing experience. And I still vividly remember those days when the bombs were falling across around us in the cantonment area. And there was shooting and, you know, mass mayhem all around. So it was quite a harrowing experience. But when the liberation of Bangladesh happened, we took refuge in the cantonment area. And from there, the Indian army picked us up. So we became refugees, or in other words, a better word is civilians under protective custody. So according to Geneva regulations, we were civilians. We had nothing to do with the army, but we were civilians under protective custody of the Indian army. So that is how we got under the protective control of the Indian army. And the Indian army then took us away with them when they went back to India in January and February and March 1971. We were the 93,000 people. 93,000 people included mostly army and paramilitary personnel. And there were 13,000 of us non-military people in that group. So they took us to camps across India. Of course, 93,000 is a huge, big number. And they settled us in different places in northern India. And that is where they put us in barbed wire cages. These cages were guarded by armed guards because they did not want us to escape from those areas. Of course, it was more for the military people, but also the civilians like us, we were also put in that caged environment. These were literally barbed wire cages, and we lived hand to mouth. We were given some food, we were given some clothing, but for the next 2 years, we spent in that TOW, prisoner of war camps in India. Now I've explained this in my book, and you would see that the situation in those 2 years were not very good. And the most important thing was that we didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. There was no communication between India and Pakistan. So there were no diplomatic channels. So both countries were just posturing, and they were not talking about these 93,000 people. So we became stranded in there, and we just did not know what was going to happen in the next few days or few months. So I think the feeling of being in limbo was the worst thing that we went through that time. So, but my story is about our 2 years, what we did, how we lived, how we survived, what did we do as a child. You know, I was a child. So we used to play around. And of course, being a child was a big blessing that I, my brothers, my sibling would just play around. But I think the brunt of all this was on our parents, because our parents really suffered. They were used to a very good life in East Pakistan, the then East Pakistan, and they were suddenly uprooted, and now they were living on floors. All we had was a chadar or a bed sheet that we put on the floor, and we slept there for 2 years. So I think it was a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of bad feeling for our parents. But the one thing our parents did is that they kept their spirits up, and they actually focused on us, on the 3 siblings. So alhamdulillah, all 3 of us got well educated. So that was their focus even during the camp life, and after the camp life, they did quite well. And in our upbringing, they had suffered the emotional trauma, but they did not give it to us. They kept it to themselves. They would not talk. In fact, my father never used to talk about what happened in East Pakistan. He was kind of, very sad at that. And he also never had any grudge against anybody. He was completely apolitical. He never had that this people did this to us or anything. He said it is just my fate, and that is what it is. So even though he suffered a lot, he had not had anything to blame on anybody, and my parents just focused on our education. So after the 2 years, we were released in East Pakistan from the prisoner of war camps in India, and we were put in trains and transported to Pakistan. When we reached West Pakistan, there was not much support system for us. In those days, there were no refugee support organizations like we have today. and we were just left on our own. So for the first 2-3 years were very difficult and tough for our family, to the extent that my father did not have a job. We lived kind of hand to mouth. But one thing good was that in Pakistan in those days, the education system was free. So we were able to get education. And then I went to medical school, and then, as you see, I went to England and then to America. So here I'm settled. So here is the brief history of my person and what I've written in the book. The book actually stops when we reach Pakistan. It does not go. So the book is only about from 1969 or 1970 till 1973, when we were released from the POW camps. And this book, you see, it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and countries of the world. So please take a look. I have a few more things to say about how I wrote the book and the process of writing from the book. But at this moment, I would like to just stop and ask if anybody has any questions so far. I would love to address. So if anybody has any questions so far about what I just said or my personal story, I would be happy to answer before I move on.
Or by the way, do you think Professor Azimuddin would like to take the questions maybe at the end of the end of the presentation? That might be of, so that we can, we are all writing down, so there will be a lot of questions, I'm pretty sure. Yes, please, you would like to go ahead.
Sure. I will then keep going.
Yeah, please.
All this time passed by. I went to medical school, I became a surgeon, and my children grew up. I got married and children grew up and all that. Then the question is, why did I write the book? But, for all these 45, 50 years, I knew that there was something in the back of my mind that I wanted to bring out to the world. And I, when at home, we used to talk about this sometimes. Some family member would ask or a friend would ask. And I knew that there was something in there that I needed to bring out. But when my son actually started taking interest in 1971 and he did his thesis on, he actually interviewed me about my feelings, and he interviewed some other people. And that is when really I wanted, the idea of jotting it down into a formal book came. So I think I would say my son was the inspiration behind the actual coming out of this book. One of the things that had happened to me, and say it luck or my good fortune or whatever, what I had done, because since I was interested, I talked to a lot of people even as a child, and even as a teenager, when I was 13 and 14 years old, I had jotted down some memories from those times. I had talked to my mother a lot about this when I was young, and refreshed my memories. And, it is kind of surprising, and I'm kind of surprised myself that as a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, writing down your past or your experience is probably not the highest priority in your mind. But for some reason, I was able to do that, and I made note for myself and jotted it down with pen and pencil. And I kept it all these years in my little green box or suitcase that I had. So I had those memories, because you would say, how does an 8-year-old child remember all of this? When this started, I was 8 years old. When I came out of the camp, I was 10 years old. So those 2 years we spent in the camp. My brother and sister helped me with this book. I had written down my own memories with the help of my mother, who has since then passed away. But also, I would tell you that it was a very pleasurable experience for me to write a book. I think writing a book, as you're all learned people and you all know, is a very pleasurable experience. You actually dig back into the past and you get to interview people. So I interviewed a lot of people. who were in the camps. And fortunately, I was able to find some very important people. Even the cage person, civilian in charge of our camp, I found out that he lived in a small town in Canada. So I flew to Canada and drove up to this small village. His name is Mr. Kudus, and he had immigrated to Canada, and I went and interviewed him. I interviewed a whole lot of other people who were involved in 1971, during the war, after the war, and in the POW camps. So that was actually a soul-searching mission that I went on to. And then the internet is a great help. I was surprised that there was so much information. In many ways, there is not so much compared to other events around the same time. But at the same time, there are other things that you can gather from the internet as to what was transpiring in Bangladesh at that time, around that time. So I was able to gather all that information. And then, it was a story that has never been told. There has been a lot of writings and books from the Bangladesh side, from the Indian side, actually not so much from the Pakistani experience, from the Bihari experience. There has been some books. Major Salek wrote a book, and there are so many other books as well. But none of the books had ever mentioned the life in a POW camp. They were more like political books, or just trying to present one side of the story or the other side of the story. I wanted to be a neutral because a child is neutral. And I just presented what I saw. I didn't try to take sides in the book, in one side or another. I just presented what I saw, what I heard from my parents. It was this story. In fact, you would be surprised that this is the largest number of POWs in any war except World War II. But there has not been a single book which tells you the lifestyle or the life of what is happening inside those camps. So mine is the only book that actually tells us, it gives a little background of what happened, and then it tells us about the life, how we spent the day, when did we wake up, how did we eat food, how did we go to sleep. Those are kind of things have never been documented. It was a never been told story. So I presented that. As I mentioned, that I just tried to present the facts as I saw, and I may be wrong in many places because I presented it as I saw as a child. And I hope that people will, when people read the book, they will take away the message that it is an impartial book. It does not want to take any sides. And, everybody in the world has a right to live and be happy where they are and be proud of what they feel and do. And my hope is that when people read this book, they will get this feeling and they will appreciate that we got to recognize each other, understand that this is a group of people, they have their right, they have their wishes, they have their way of life, they have their language, they have their culture, and here we are. So we must not impose one's belief on another. We just got to respect each other, talk to each other. And in fact, there is a very, very good segment in my book. You will see that when I said who are the heroes of my book, I said, of course, my parents were one of the heroes of my book. But I put Colonel Harnam Singh, which is a very important character in my book. So Colonel Harnam Singh was a Sikh colonel in the Indian Army, and he was very compassionate. He did not treat the prisoners as if us prisoners. There were 800 of us in that camp. He did not treat us like we were dirt or we were, unimportant people or just, slums. He treated us with respect. So here is an Indian army, which is our sworn enemy, quote unquote, who is showing compassion to the prisoner of wars who have really zero authority or zero power and they're stranded at his mercy in the camps. These people that don't even have proper food and clothing. And here is some respect we got from a colonel in the Indian Army. So I think this is the message that, there is goodness everywhere in the world, and we got to accept that, and we got to respect with each other and talk to each other. And I think that's the only way to survive. And I think that I hope and believe is the takeaway message from the book. So I've actually spoke probably quite a bit and quite long, maybe even more than what I was supposed to. But that's all I have for my talk. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to receive them.
Professor Akbar bhai, would you like me to, continue here with?
Yeah, I think we continue with the next speaker.
Okay.
And then we can come back for question answer.
Okay,
The
sure.
next speaker is if Hassan Jasimuddin Maudud, the chief guest, if she's around, then she can take the floor. Appa, apni ke essen? Okay, then we can,
Yeah, I don't see her.
we go to the next one.
I sent a message. I didn't.
We go to the next one.
Okay, so we'll go to the guest speaker, Professor Dr. Abdullah Sheikh Mohammed.
Yeah, special guest. Is he there?
Yes.
Yes.
But
let's
so,
go.
I think so. Is he here? Professor Sheikh, are you there?
Yes, Budget is here.
Okay. So are you ready to give your speech?
Please go ahead. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Walaikum assalam.
Okay. So Professor Dr. Abdullah Sheikh Muhammad Baizadul Hassan is the chairman of the Theology Medical College, University of Kumilla. He's also the senior vice chairman and managing trustee, American Bangladesh University. So I would like to request him to say something about the book or the author or anything related to the Boy Refugee, the book Boy Refugee. So Dr. Professor Abdullah Hassan, please.
Thank you very much. I'm giving the special thank you to Dr. Khwaja, moderator and director research, PRC.bd. And I also give a special thanks and Mubarak my respectable Professor Dr. Khwaja Ahmed, Session Chairman, PRC, Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed, Co-Chairman, Professor Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, keynote speaker. I think she is not available here. Mr. Mahfuz Rahman, guest speaker. Mr. Zainuddin Khan, discussion with Colonel Ashraf Al-Din, Principal, Manarat College, Advisor PRC. Especially, have listened the total history of the books, the Boy Refugee. I think the book is laid out with chapter heading here. And the detailed history appears helping readers know how the various terms linked
Can we mute our microphones, all of us, except Professor Sheikh?
Yes.
Oh, it's okay. Oh,
Please go ahead, please.
go ahead. I think the tone is hopeful, showing the author's appreciations for his family's position during those difficult times, while poignantly noting the more difficult situations of others all around him. I think this is a very much good presentation to the whole world, especially the refugees, those who are staying in several countries and facing the difficult situation. I think respectable author, she mentioned the things, and I a special thanks to him also to present that type problem. Thank you very much, and thank you to all.
Thank you, Professor Sheikh. Thank you for your presentation. I shall go ahead to the next person, Mr. Mahbub. Are you here, Mr. Mahbub Rahman? I don't know. Are you here, Mr. Mahbub Rahman?
Yeah, I'm there.
Hello. Welcome you to the meeting. Let me introduce Mr. Mahbub Rahman. Mr. Mahbub Rahman is our guest speaker today. Dr. Rahman is a banker by profession, having dedicated his career in the national and international banking organizations. Earlier, he completed his bachelor's and master's from Karachi University, Pakistan. Being a bright student, Mr. Rahman was awarded Distinction Certificate in American History and certificates in research methodology, use of computers, and in management decisions and time management. Mr. Rahman served the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, Standard Chartered Bank, Bank Indo-Swiss, and business entrepreneur like the Transcom Limited in crucial positions of managing human resources. His passion is in extending training for human resource development, led him establish a firm called Bank Consult, aimed at assisting the needs of the banks and other non-banking institutions in the private sector, and to develop their human resource capabilities with a view to develop the professional competence of the staff. Further, Mr. Rahman is the founder of the Bangladesh Society for Human Resource Management and the first president of the society. His professional skill and experience as a trainer facilitated him to travel to many countries of the world. Mr. Mahbub, please go ahead and give your views on the book, The Boy Refugee.
Thank you, Nilufa. It's a great opportunity for me to speak on this important book. And I've heard the previous speakers. My approach would be a slightly different, and I hope Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin Sahib would appreciate that. The approach that I will be taking is looking at the book. I have read all the reviews, several of the reviews, but I will take a little bit of a different approach. Dr. Azim has written this book from boyhood until his adulthood. And he has given the description of those days, traumatic events of 71. He has given his life in the camps, and I can tell Dr. Azim that at my age of 73 now, I also had a camp experience in Pakistan. And I think I'd like to share with him. My father was in the army, a medical doctor, and we were in West Pakistan, and so all the West Pakistani Bengali officers were rounded up and put into a special camp. We are not caged in, but we are fenced with barbed wire. But life was not that bad. They were good to us. So what he has written about the refugee in the book, I can absolutely understand and admire and appreciate. I can also tell Dr. Azimuddin Saab that he studied at Dow Medical College. I had a very good friend, a lot of friends in Dow Medical College. And for his knowledge, my early schooling was at Karachi Grammar School. So what he has written about in the book and about his background, I'm well aware of it. What Dr. Azimuddin sacrificed made him very hardened for future life. A camp life, as I saw it for 6 months, has hardened Dr. Azimuddin for a future life and to steer and navigate his future life. So the book itself is an inspiration for a lot of global refugees now throughout the Middle East who are going to Europe and America, and also from North Africa and African countries who are going to other countries. The book is a source of inspiration for all the refugees. Now, looking at the book and seeing him right now on television, I have a feeling that he's a soft person in his heart. And looking at his personality, he's very soft-spoken also. And the refugee crisis that he has experienced has given him strength. In adversity, there is strength. And he's very lucky. I might say that not all refugees globally today are lucky as him. We have to make sure that all refugees are not lucky. Many of them may not have that luck, but it's Allah's blessing that he has come out with such hardened morale and motivation for his future, for his family, as a father, as a husband, and as a surgeon, eminent surgeon in the United States. So in adversity, there is strength. So not all refugees can make it. What I saw from his book, whatever I read it, he had that determination, the grit, the strength of steel. And looking at the cover, when he's sitting down, squatting on some stone or wood bench, I don't know, in a yoga position, I could see that he has a positive future. He was not very, I could feel, I may be wrong, but I could feel that he had taken his camp life in a positive spirit. So when you are a refugee, it all depends on your attitude. If you have a negative attitude as a refugee, you won't be able to succeed. But I could see that he has a very positive attitude. And if you have a negative attitude, you suffer from complacency, you lack confidence, and you have become physically weak, and you get into regression effect. But on him, I don't think I saw a negative attitude from the comments that I saw. He had a positive attitude. He was actively thinking as a refugee. He had that confidence in him that he will come out of it because of his strength and mental character and of his background, and he was physically strong. So on the one hand, some refugee might go into regression, but Dr. Azim went into progression. So he came out of it. So from boyhood to adulthood has been very, very nice. Now when he went to US and England and studied there, I want to talk about the environment that he has been. Not all refugees can have that environment. He found, if you have a disabling environment, however positive you are, you cannot succeed. But you have an enabling environment, however negative you are, you still have the opportunity to be successful. In his case, he has had a positive attitude all along that he will come out of it. So he had that potential, he released that potential talent in the United States and studied hard, became a doctor, and then he wrote his book only for about two or 3 years that he was writing about. But his human suffering is really, I admire that. But his resilience to come out of it has also been great. Otherwise, this kind of luck does not favor all refugees. But he has been extremely lucky. And I hope his book inspires all refugees currently in the globe, migrating all over Europe and America. This book should be read by all refugees. That's how you come out of it. And yes, remain strong and lead your future and be successful. Because in Syria, refugees have become Olympic champions. In his case, he has become a surgeon, an eminent surgeon in the United States, which is really appreciated. At my age, I really admire that book that he has written, and all that he has said is very plain and simple language. His true feeling and his extreme luck, which is good background, which is personality, soft-spoken. Any refugee would make it. Any refugee could make it after reading his book. So this was just a short thing that I commented on. The rest, I think, leave it to the panel. Thank you so much. Okay, I finished.
Thank you, sir. I would like to make a comment here. I think you are 100% right in all accounts, as you said. I was really blessed to have parents like I did, who actually never looked at the negative side of what happened in Bangladesh. My father never ever blamed anybody that my house was taken or my job was taken or my bonus or my pension was lost. He never blamed anybody. So we were brought up with that positive attitude of think forward, not look back. So I was really blessed with that, and I have to credit my parents for instilling that in us. But also, you are so right. So the luck, not everybody gets the environment. So for example, when we came to Pakistan, we didn't have money to go to school. The schooling was free. I got a scholarship in college, and dorm medical was so cheap. So all these things lined up. And if it weren't for those things, I would probably not be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what Mr. Mahbub has said is really enlightening. I think it's the spirit, the positive spirit that made him go all the way to become a doctor, a surgeon. And I think he has blessings from his parents, and also he has respect from his children, because his son is the one who inspired him. So thank you very much, Dr. Azimuddin, and we are really honored to have heard this story from you. So let's go to the next speaker, Mr. Zainuddin Khan. Mr. Khan began his career with the tea industry in Chattogram, Bangladesh. After passing out from St. Gregory's School, Dhaka, Mr. Khan joined Brixton Day College, London. He then received his bachelor's degree from Karachi University and a diploma in integrative counseling of CCAP, UK. Besides having skills in tea tasting and blending, Mr. Khan has expertise in psychotherapy, counseling for the psychological and emotional issues, life coaching, project management, and business consulting. I'm happy to invite Mr. Khan to tell us the story of refugees. He has some stories in mind in particular. Mr. Khan, please go ahead. He is now living in Bangladesh. He's settled in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. I'm sorry. I tend to think that he's from Bangladesh because he was in Bangladesh before.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. On this important book, The Boy Refugee, I'm pleased to say some of my own feelings. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed, Chairman PRC Bangladesh, and its members for organizing the launching of this important book written by Khwaja Azimuddin from this platform. Unfortunately, very few books have been written about the debacle of 1971, which has left a very painful and dark blot on our history. A migrant moves from one destination out of his own choice, but a refugee becomes stateless in his own country and has no choice of his own. Circumstances force him to leave his own country for some unknown destination. This is most painful, particularly for young innocent children who have no idea about what is happening and why it is happening. This leaves a devastating traumatic impact on their childhood. Creating a number of emotional and psychological problems when they grow up. In fact, their childhood is robbed from them. Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin has written The Boy Refugee from his heart and has presented a picturesque view of how he felt and how he saw through his journey from Dhaka to prisoner of war camp, and finally his arrival in Pakistan after 2 years. Doctor, we are indeed proud of you and thank you for highlighting the refugee problem through this book. The human heart bleeds when you see an innocent Syrian girl crying because she has lost her parents in the conflict. When a 1-month-old boy without his parents is found in a boat with 30 other refugees. In fact, there would be no refugees if powerful nations did not meddle in the affairs of other countries. They continuously do so for expanding their influences and for economic gains, as they did in Libya and Syria. Other examples are Libya and Iraq. Other examples are Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and not to forget Palestine and Kashmir. We can talk on this subject for days and months, but now on our behalf and on behalf of the humanity, I congratulate Khwaja Azimuddin for writing this book, The Boy Refugee. Thank you, sir, and thank you, everybody. Could I ask a few small questions from Mr. Azimuddin, just briefly?
Sure.
Khwaja Sahab, I would like to know one or two first. Did you have relatives in West Pakistan, and how were you received by them? Number one. Number two, how did you adjust yourself in your school days with your new friends? And number three, how long did your parents take to adjust themselves psychologically and financially?
So, very pertinent questions. When we went to West Pakistan, we did not have a strong support. We stayed with my mother's second cousin for a few months. And after that, they were not well to off as well. So then we moved to another family. So for the next few months, we were kind of not very settled. And it took about 1 year for my father to find a job. So, and when he found a job, it was well below his qualification level. It was only for 1,000 rupees per month. So you can imagine it was very difficult times and there was no support system as such. We did not have much at all in family support. There were some friends who offered my father some money, and that was very nice for them just to get on. Finding new friends, when you are a child and you just get along. I personally feel that my parents shielded us from the negatives of all that happened around us, and we just got on. Even in the camps, we were playing cricket and we were playing football from makeshift equipment. So a child is a child, or playing other kind of stuff, hide and seek and stuff like that. So it wasn't too difficult to make new friends, especially because those people also spoke the same. The West Pakistanis, they were mostly people who had Mahajirs who had immigrated from India. So the cultural background was the same, the language was the same that we spoke. So That was the second question. And the third question, how long my parents took to recover. In 1982, so in about 10 years time, reasonably well back on the track. But mentally, I don't think he ever got rid of the trauma, so he never used to talk about or his life in Bangladesh. I never heard him talk anything. My mother also did not mention anything, but as I mentioned that she did help me in writing down some notes. I don't think they ever mentally got off from that trauma.
And finally, which school did you go to?
I went to a school in Delhi Boys Secondary School.
Delhi Boys School.
In
yes,
Karimabad, in Karachi.
In Nazmabad.
Yes, Karimabad. Somewhere same.
Thank you. Nice to know you. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much. Shall we go ahead with the book launching?
Yes.
Sir?
Now
Okay.
Colonel Ashraf is there next.
Yeah, I think you launched the book and then he will wrap up the session.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So because the chairman, the chief guest is not here today, so I would request our chairman, Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed, to launch the book Open from Bangladesh.
Sure.
Professor.
Dr. Azimuddin, your presence here amongst us has been most inspiring. And as my friend Mahbub Rahman, the international banker, just mentioned, that your life has actually been very inspiring. And the first time I read the reviews about your book, at the time we had decided to talk to you to see if it can be launched here. So when I contacted you, you said that yes, it has been launched in India, in the USA, and some other countries, but not in Bangladesh. By then we had launched a couple of books. One was on refugees and the other one was on some other subject. And of course, a number of other books on disaster management and other fields in different parts of the subcontinent. During our meetings, conferences, we used to launch these books. But this one, when you kindly agreed to launch in Bangladesh, we were really extremely happy. And on behalf of the PRC, Policy Research Centre, I formally launched this book and recommend to all refugees around the world to take a copy of this and to read. And as you know, Dr. Azimuddin, that we have 1.1 million refugees from Myanmar, that is the previous Burma. Our Prime Minister was very, very kind to give them help and support. They were all put in a place. Around 6,000 acres of land was allotted to them in Cox's Bazar, near the sea beach. And then slowly one island was identified, and now around 30,000 people has been shifted to that island. These refugees who were actually tortured by the Burmese army, and they left everything behind and they crossed over to Bangladesh. We are the neighbors. And now they are being resettled in that new island. This is very beautifully developed by the Bangladesh government. And the schools are there, schools, colleges, hospitals, and all types of amenities are available. Free housing has been developed for these refugees. And I think it is a classic point. The Bangladesh government has been lauded, has been congratulated on this particular effort, on this initiative taken to house 1.1 million refugees in Bangladesh. So this is certainly an eye-opener. So, Dr. Azimuddin, I thank you for your time and efforts in meeting us, and we formally launched this book in Bangladesh. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed, our CEO, would like to say a few words about the book. Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed, please.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Azim, for this great book. I would say really it's a great book. I would like to take around 5 to 7 minutes or so, because very recently we had another book, a similar type of book written by Azmat Ashraf, a banker who was a friend of mine in Rajshahi Cadet College, and he wrote the book In Search for a Home, My Endless Search for a Home. And he was, well, the family came from Bihar, settled in Dinajpur area, and they were there, and then during the War of Liberation, members. So that book was a personal memoir of that young gentleman. As he was roaming around, he shifted his home 7 times in 7 countries, and finally he's now settled in Canada. Now, just a little bit of beginning of that. So I was just thinking, back of my mind, I asked the same question to Azmat Ashraf. Why did you write the book? What was the intention of writing this book after 40 years, 35, 40 years or so? His answer was that, well, we were a refugee linguistic minority for no fault of ours. We were looked down upon, and then we had to move our homes from one place to another place. Now, the reason behind my writing this book was to give a balanced view of the conflict of 1971, to understand the painful part of the history. And it was a very, it was very unemotional of the author. With this little background, to Professor Azim, just a little bit of, perhaps he may like to touch upon again, what was the reason? What was the reason behind writing this book? The two-year experience in Roorkee, India, and then going back to West Pakistan, and so his camp life. What was the intention behind writing this book? Was it because of telling the story, telling the history, making it correct history, or what? Or his personal agonizing journey in the camp? So just a very simple, simple question to Professor Azim, if he may like to elaborate. Thank you so much, Professor Azim.
Thank you. So first of all, I know Mr. Azmat Ashraf as well. I've talked to him, and his is also the same viewpoint that I have. His book is written from a humanitarian standpoint. He's also, a lot has happened to him, perhaps more than it has happened to me. He's really not blaming anybody or pointing fingers. So he's done it for the sake of humanity, so that people understand each other and respect each other. My background was also the same. First of all, I knew that it was a story that had to be brought out. Number 2, not a lot had been written from the Bihari side. So I wanted to bring that out. Number 3, I wanted to bring the plight of the refugees. And I didn't talk much about it, but thank God for this book. I have done a lot of work with the refugee organizations in promoting the refugee cause throughout the world. And that was one intention. So all these factors, came together, and I just wanted to present a balanced view from the other side as well, because this side has not been written a whole lot about. So these were my various intentions.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's move on to the end of this session. Colonel Ashraf is going to speak on, he will conclude the session. He's going to give his views on the whole session. So I would like to introduce him. Colonel Ashraf is the Director, International Talent Care Academy, a national curriculum school of talented orphans run on charity. He's also the advisor, Policy Research Centre, a civil society tank, and the member of Network of Asia Pacific Schools and Institutes of Public Administration and Governance, NAPSIPAC. His most important role is an editor, Clarion Call, an English magazine for the youth. He is actively involved in social advancement of the society. Earlier, Colonel Ashraf served as principal in a number of English medium schools after retirement from the commissioned service of the Army. To his credit, Colonel Ashraf served as Colonel General Staff, Counterintelligence Bureau of Directorate General of Forces Intelligence, DGFI, and as Senior Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Research Studies. Colonel Ashraf is also a very good writer, and he's dedicating his life to the lessons and the learnings of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and to Islam. So let's hear from Colonel Ashraf, please.
Appa, thank you very much. Can you hear me clear? And I'm in an area now where a lot of sounds are coming out from different sides. So, but actually, I could not stop myself, keeping myself attached to this program because it is so wonderful a program, the book launching of a book like The Refugee Boy, The Boy Refugee, and then by Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin. I really appreciate my heartfelt thanks for, this is not a memoir, this is not just a reminiscences, rather it is a wonderful piece of research work, as I understand. I could not go through the, I love to get the book. I could not go through the book whole, but I have heard and then I have read a few portions, that's all. I will have only just one or 2 points I will touch, but before that, actually here in this group, we all are most of us in an age where we do not have any competition, any hatred, any sort of, personal grudge and that sort of thing. We are in a stage where we are to pursue the truth. We got to pursue the truth. We got to pursue the good work. So now what happens is the history must be written, and because if the true history is not passed on, then wrong history will come and the generations will suffer. Now the history of our liberation. War of liberation.
Please unmute. Please, you have muted. Colonel Ashraf, please, can you unmute?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Take us. Go ahead.
John. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. Okay,
Hello?
go. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, it was an interruption because I'm okay. Let me finish it very quickly. Firstly, is everything has got the
Unmute. Please unmute.
All right. Okay. So now we have got different types of people now. See, we have got people absolutely Bangladeshis. They never then is Pakistan. They lived their life. They never knew what is West Pakistan. They thought anybody speaking Urdu is a Pakistani. We have got people, those who have studied in Pakistan, or because their parents stayed in Pakistan, so they had mingled with the society. They know the then West Pakistan, and they have got different idea and understanding. We have got Urdu-speaking people, those who came from Bihar, migrated from India and came to the then East Pakistan. And we had people, those who came from Karachi to East Pakistan. They are quite different. So if we say that from that portion, I mean, from that period, if we find out this sort of people writing their memoirs, the context will be different, the versions will be different, and we will come to know actual text, actual message, actual history from that. Otherwise, the political quagmire will give us wrong informations. And whatever actually history records is not politics. History records geopolitical elements, not minor elements of politics. The small little clashes and misunderstandings, those are not points of history. The history is always with the geopolitical measures and important things. We are going to miss it if our generations do not really express these things and write down these things. So I will with my heart, from my heart, I want to congratulate Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin. He has done a great job, and I can say that here, let's say Dr. Azimuddin, he got a lot of experience about Pakistan, about the war of liberation, and after the liberation in Bangladesh. He can write a book on this. Remember, our Dr. Mahfuz, he is an educationist, and he has had friends, like I had friends, those who were Urdu speaking. We have seen their sufferings. We have seen how they have left this country. Some of them even could not leave this country, but was living in a horrible condition. So all these things should come out. As a matter of fact, we must not go to the grave. Like Nilufar Appa should be able to write a memoir. Mr. Zainuddin, he was in Chittagong. Though I am from Chittagong, we never met. But I think some of our friends will become friends. So if he writes the history he has seen, he remembers, I think that will be a good element for our future history. Otherwise, the political bad intentions, we have got enemies. The enemy will always try to make us forget the real history, and they will always try so that we don't pass on good history, right history, and right geopolitical perspectives to our generations. And if we are not writing it, if we are going to the grave with the truth we know, I think we will have to remain answerable to Allah. And that duty, I will say the holy duty has been really performed by Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin. I really appreciate. And about this book, there is, I will not say anything, but this is a good book. But in the conclusion, I will say one thing. The hatred never gives peace in the planet. The way in India, now the present government of India is trying to rewrite the Muslim history in a wrong way, rewrite the Mughal history in a wrong way, and spread hatred and crush the Muslims there. The way the Muslims are suffering in Kashmir, in Palestine, in Chechnya, anywhere, even in Bangladesh, Muslims are now suffering, and there is no doubt about it. So we'll have to really be truthful to our experience and write that it is neither politics nor anything. It is the truthfulness and duty of our life, because Allah has given us a chance to know about so many things, and it is our now duty to record it and pass it on to our generation.
Can I speak? Can I say something?
So with this, I will finish my words, and thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jarinda wants to say something. Maybe.
Can I say one?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead, Dr. Zainab.
I think I fully agree with Colonel Ashraf, and under the leadership of Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed, we can write a book, and those who are, and some of us can contribute our side and chapters, and we can write a very good book, because our young generation does not know the history. Some of them do not know what happened, why it happened, and that so this is to be highlighted. And another thing I would like to mention here to Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, that he met Mr. Kudus in Canada, and our with Ahmed.
Wonderful proposal, sir. Thank you very much. I really second it.
Can I speak for?
Yes, sure. Mr. Mahbub, please go ahead.
Okay.
You can be one of the writers.
Yeah, all of us, everyone. No one can responsibility.
I fully agree 100% with Colonel Ashraf Al-Din. I fully back his views, and my request is to reinforce what Colonel has said, that truth must be told, and anybody who writes wrong history or a distorted history, and anybody who reads it in school, colleges, and universities will give rise to a defective leadership, because I strongly feel that the post-1971 generation of Indians, Bangladeshis, and Pakistanis must know the true history of what happened. And that is very important for future leadership, which will only can bring peace in the subcontinent. Any distorted history will have a lasting impact, and which will destroy the political fabric, the cultural fabric, and the ethnic fabric of the entire subcontinent. It is very important to understand what happened, how it happened, and to give a sincere feeling without any hatred, because it can be corrected under the right leadership. But the problem is, leadership has to come by reading the right history. Now, the other thing about the book, to Dr. Khwaja Azimuddin, I would say, I love the volume. It's not very long. It's neither too short. It has a reasonable length of pages, which makes it attractive. Any book which runs into thousands of pages doesn't attract much readership. But his book, I'm sure every refugee in the world will go through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are almost to the end. If there are no more questions, please may I request Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed to say, give us the vote of thanks. Dr. Mahfuz Ahmed.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I express my vote of thanks, just one point I cropped up in my mind. What is the take home message today? I would say the take home message would be to that, as rightly discussed, we are to write the correct history. There's some and also we did find that we need to know the other side of the war in 1971. And that has to be a very unemotional account of the war. So that is something we should continue.
Yes. I think each one of us can write one or two chapters, because we have gone through this entire process.
It's available online now?
Yeah, it is also available online. Yeah,
Fine,
good idea. We
fine.
can take this
So,
initiative.
okay, thank you so much. So that's great. So keeping that thing in mind, we continue reading the book and also similar books. The very important thing is that who is the author, because the author can twist, twist writing the history. That's the important thing. Well, on behalf of the Policy Research Centre, Bangladesh, on behalf of Professor Professor Akbaruddin Ahmed, I would like to thank you, all of you, to joining today's Zoom meeting. Policy Research Centre has been working, bringing all the different views, different views, and the authors and the intellectuals in this forum, so that we can have open discussion. I would like to thank all of you, especially to Dr. Nilufar Karim, who took immense travel gathering all of you here today. Thank you so much, and have a good day. And within a day or so, we would usher in something new for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Azimuddin. Thank you, Professor Akbar, Mr. Mahbub, Zain Bhai, Mahfuz Bhai, and all others who were present here. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
And a big thank you to our tech support guy.
Yes.
Hassan. He's done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Okay,
sir.
thank you,
bro.
guys. Thank you. So let's see you next time, January 28, I think.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I hope Dr. Azimuddin will stay connected sometime in the future.
Inshallah.
We'd be very pleased if you would like to join with us in any of our meetings.
Inshallah.
Thank
And
you.
one day I will, inshallah, visit Bangladesh and meet you personally.
Oh, sure. You're most welcome.
You will be the host.
Most welcome.
You will be the host.
Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum salam.
Assalam. This is the young tech guy. Done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's done a